Let's
All
do
right,
it.
man. Can you introduce yourself, where you're coming from, and tell us about the shows you're on?
What's up? Yeah, I am Mikey McNuggets, named by the one and only Joe Thomas, who didn't remember my name and called me McNuggets. And when Joe Thomas calls you something like that, it just sticks. I'm coming to you from downtown Cleveland, about half a mile from Cleveland Browns Stadium, as we get ready for a Browns Broncos matchup that I don't think any of us had circled as a game that would have kind of massive playoff implications for both sides a few weeks ago. But now it's kind of a must win for both sides. So it should be a fun one this Sunday, man.
Yeah, totally. So what's the vibe in Cleveland with this team, man? Like they're insanely talented.
The team, yeah, top to bottom, it's we said this before the season. I thought the roster 1 through 53 was on par with just about anyone in the NFL. Maybe not in that top one, two, three category, but outside of that, between 4 and 10, you can make the case that the Browns, top to bottom, had as talented as a roster as really any team in football. And then there's the whole Deshaun Watson roller coaster, up, down, injured, healthy, injured, healthy. Coming off his best game against Baltimore, you find out you just lost your starting quarterback for the season. It was the highest of highs, the lowest of lows in a 2 day stretch. But after beating Pittsburgh on Sunday and looking ahead, there's the ingredients on this team to still win football games ugly. And this defense is as advertised. And when they're on, they're as good as any defense we've seen in the NFL in quite a while. So the vibes right now are still pretty damn high in Cleveland, but it is teetering on a thread. One bad DTR game and it can come crashing back down to earth. But the fact that we haven't had the bad DTR game yet, it is still pretty high, and people are quite excited and talking themselves into things that I personally would not be willing to bet money on, but they're still talking like this team can win a playoff game or two, potentially make the AFC Championship. Hell, if the defense plays as well as it could, maybe a Super Bowl. I don't know if I'm going that far yet with a rookie quarterback, but we haven't seen the bad DTR performance to kind of deflate the Cleveland optimism bubble yet. So it's been a fun time here, man.
Oh, yeah, I can't even imagine. Well, I can imagine because we have lived through a defense carrying you to the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning,
There you
right?
go.
We had him, and total that defense carried us. You saw the San Francisco defense carry them way further than they should have been. But tell us, who is DTR? Like, truly, I'd never heard of him, and I see these acronyms. Like, who is he? What are his skill sets? And tell us about him.
Yeah, DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson. He's a rookie. He was the 140th pick in the draft this year, fifth round, one pick after Clayton Tune in Arizona. And he started 50 games in college at UCLA in the Chip Kelly system. So kind of came into the NFL with a bit of, I don't want to say exactly pro style experience, but Chip Kelly's not running a vanilla, one read system in UCLA. So he came in with experience. At the combine, he actually threw a 62-mile-an-hour pass, which tied the combine record with Josh Allen for the
With a
fastest registered
football?
throw with a football. Yeah, 62
Oh
miles an hour. It
my.
was the tied Josh Allen for the fastest registered combine throw since they started recording that. I believe it was 2009. It's about 15 years. So the dude has a rocket. A little bit undersized. He still learning, I would say, the Stefanski offense, the NFL offense against Pittsburgh, and kudos to Kevin Stefanski. They made the game plan as simple as possible. They knew they were down both starting tackles. They're playing against the Pittsburgh pass rush with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. And you got a rookie quarterback who his strength is not going through progressions right now. Let me just put it that way. So they asked him, three-step drop, let the ball rip. And he was actually pretty damn effective. His time to throw from snap to actually the ball leaving his hand was 2.34 seconds, according to PFF, which was the quickest time to throw the Browns have had all season. And I don't think that's by coincidence. I think that is totally by design from Kevin Stefanski. They only attempted 4 passes over 10 plus air yards. So 39 of his 43 pass attempts were either behind the line of scrimmage or within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So we didn't see a ton from DTR, to be totally honest with you. And his first start against Baltimore, he was pretty terrible, but he also learned he was starting at 10:30 that morning and did not have any practice reps leading up to it. So I actually throw that game out the window. I don't think it's fair to judge DTR anything we saw from Baltimore. What we saw from Pittsburgh was a young quarterback who made plays late when he needed to, was relatively pedestrian for the first 58 minutes of the game, but his coach didn't ask him to do a lot, so he didn't do a lot, and I think he did what he was asked of pretty well. But for anyone in Cleveland to say They have a ton of confidence in DTR. They know what they're even getting from DTR to even make a conclusion whether he's good, bad, or just mid. I don't think we have enough of a sample size from him to even make any type of judgment on who a fifth round rookie with 2 starts, one real start, one kind of makeshift throwing the win start. I don't think we have enough information yet to make any definitive declarations on who DTR is. But he does have a lot of experience, and this road game in Denver is going to tell us a lot because it was a very, very favorable crowd in Cleveland this past weekend. I live, like I said, half a mile from the stadium. When something happens well, I hear it, and you can hear that stadium from kickoff until the final whistle. And when you have that behind you, it makes everything a lot easier. When you're at Mile High Stadium and they're making a ton of noise on third down and you're trying to make checks, we're going to see what the rookie's made of on Sunday.
Yeah, man, 100%. So with like how stacked your roster is, and now just having that hole at quarterback, are there any whispers of like if DTR flames out, making a run at like you hear Drew Brees or Phillip Rivers when he's not watching his 20 kids like might come back, or even a Thomas Brady? Are there any rumblings of that, or what are the thoughts there?
Yeah, the Browns actually signed Joe Flacco on Tuesday, so he is on the roster. Technically, still a practice squad player. He's expected to be elevated to the active roster. So I'm sure they had conversations with some other veteran quarterbacks, but they decided to go with Joe Flacco. Kevin Stefanski's already said, DTR, you're starting until you're not. So Flacco's coming in as the veteran mentor to be a quote-unquote father figure to DTR. Deshaun Watson had shoulder surgery on Tuesday, so he's actually in LA for the next 2 weeks rehabbing, so as DTR gets ready for these 2 road games. He'll have a guy with 16 years NFL experience to kind of ask questions and absorb some information from. So I think it's a decent signing. If Joe Flacco has to play football in meaningful games for the Browns or for any team at this point of his career, I think it's a suicide mission. So you got to hope DTR can keep whatever he's doing up so they don't have to go down the Joe Flacco route. But it is DTR's job to lose. And he did just enough against Pittsburgh to keep that job. We'll see what happens on the road. But Joe Flacco is in the quarterback room now as the presumptive backup as the Browns close out this season.
Man. So what do you think it is about the NFL that you have these, we always have been told that like the quarterback position is the hardest position in all of football, in all of professional sports, and that you got Purdy and Dobbs and now DTR stepping in and like being successful early on? Like, what do you think it is about it that it maybe isn't that hard to play quarterback?
That's a great question. I don't really have an answer. Purdy kind of came into a different situation where everything around him was perfect, and he just stepped in and didn't make mistakes. And when you have Debo, Ayuk, Christian
Mm.
McCaffrey, Trent Williams, all the weapons they have, George Kittle, and Kyle Shanahan calling plays, I think it definitely makes his job easier. Dobbs makes no sense to me. The fact that he got traded to Minnesota, didn't even know his receivers' names, was having Kevin O'Connell draw up plays in the headset for him because he didn't know the play. That makes no sense. That's an anomaly. I don't think we'll ever see something like that happen again. I mean, I'm sure it'll happen on like the rare instance Baker did it last year, but from like a consistent standpoint, that's just not feasible. It's weird. If you look around the NFL, defense is up and offense is down this year. And I think a lot of that comes back to just the overall inconsistencies on the offensive line. If you look across the league, I mentioned DTR's time to throw earlier. All quarterbacks are getting the ball out quicker. And it's been a shorter average depth of target. We've seen scoring down and yak yards are way up. And I'm not sure if that is the just eventual adaptation of defenses catching up to the offenses, which were light years ahead of defense 5 years ago. And then there's always that kind of counterbalance. Offense gets ahead, defense catches up, defense goes up, offense surpasses it. Or if it's just the fact that teams are allocating way more resources on that side of the ball now, knowing you could draft a receiver in the 3rd round and he could be relatively productive from day one. So I don't think it's easier to play quarterback. We've seen a lot of guys who have a pedigree struggle. I mean, Deshaun Watson's one of those guys. Russell Wilson last year. It's not like they just forgot how to play quarterback,
Really?
but they just haven't had the success they had previously. But I just think overall around the league, offensive lines have not been as good as they have been the last decade. And when you can't block, I don't care if you got Patrick Mahomes back there, you got Tom Brady, or frankly, you got me or you. It's
Mm.
not going to end well if you got a 300-pound guy barreling down your face play after play. And until we see more consistent offensive line play, I just don't expect offenses to skyrocket back past the record high production they were putting up 3-4 years ago.
Totally. Well, speaking of offensive lines not being able to hold up, absolutely terrified to go against Myles Garrett. If you would to give us a silver lining of like why we shouldn't be scared of this Browns defense, like what is their biggest weakness that we could possibly exploit?
Yeah, the biggest weakness right now is the health of the secondary. The Browns lost Rodney McLeod, their third string safety, to a biceps injury, so he's out for the season. Juan Thornhill, who was their free agent acquisition from Kansas City, missed last week with a calf injury. He still hasn't practiced this week, and it is Wednesday. He's TBD for the game. And Denzel Ward, who's been one of the best cornerbacks in all of football, suffered a shoulder injury against Pittsburgh as well. And I just saw a report an hour ago that his status for Sunday is questionable and leaning towards doubtful. So the Browns
Mm.
could be without two starters in the secondary and a third guy, McLeod, who plays significant time, which would force Ronnie Hickman, an undrafted free agent out of Ohio State, to step into the starting safety role, and possibly Mike Ford to fill in as that third cornerback. Ford picked off Lamar Jackson when he played a little bit a couple weeks ago against Baltimore, but he's definitely not Denzel Ward. And if there's anything Denver seems to do well, it's Russell Wilson finding Cortland Sutton. So if you're going up against a guy like Mike Ford as opposed to Denzel Ward, that definitely tips the favors in Denver's definitely tips the scale in Denver's favor a
Mm.
bit. But good luck trying to run the ball against this team.
Yeah, and
And you
that's
better
been
not you better not try and throw something deep, because there's something special that Myles Garrett's been doing this season, and it's not just him though. Zadarius Smith and Okoronkwo, excuse me, have also been really good at getting to the quarterback. So Russell, it could be a long day for you, my friend.
yeah, man. He's kind of been danger Russ this year. I'm
It's
hopeful,
been
but
good.
I'd
It's
love
been good.
yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear what's your score prediction for this game?
So I don't think Denver's going to have much offensive success. I also don't think Cleveland's going to have much offensive success. I watched them against Pittsburgh. I watched the Browns. I watched what DTR did. And like I said earlier, he did just enough. It was nothing spectacular, but it was just enough. And Denver's defense, I was looking through the numbers, since the Miami game, they've been pretty good. Like you look at their
Mhm.
overall numbers, I think they were 26th in points allowed, and they're like 30th in rush yards allowed. But if you go since that Miami game, they're like middle of the pack, 15th and 13th to 15th and 17th. I forget the exact numbers. I don't love the Browns running game. I don't love their receivers. I think DTR is a complete unknown, and you're playing on the road. So I think Denver's defense is going to have its way with Cleveland. I also think Denver's offense is going to struggle significantly against this Browns defense. I saw a stat that since week 6, Denver ranks bottom 5 in the league in their touchdown percentage of drives starting in their own half. So essentially, what Denver's done better than any other team in football on this little winning streak is they're forcing turnovers at a high rate and capitalizing on those turnovers into touchdowns. Well, outside of one long run against Pittsburgh last week, the Steelers weren't able to mount any sort of sustained drive against Cleveland. Cleveland forces three and outs at a historic rate this season. It's the highest rate of three and outs we've seen in the NFL since PFF started tracking that stat back in 2002. I don't love Denver's chances to sustain long drives. They're going to have to force DTR into turnovers, and I think Kevin Stefanski is going to play call and design an offensive scheme to put DTR in as few situations as humanly possible to take any type of risk. So, score prediction, it's a weird score. It's an ugly score. I hate even saying this out loud, but I think the final score is 11-10 for Cleveland. Don't ask me how I get there. I'm not quite sure. But I'm thinking some sort of ugly, hideous highness. We're going to want to gouge our eyes out afterwards, offensive struggle. But I think Cleveland finds a way to win this game 11-10.
Oh, I hope you're wrong. I hope we have a drive, a Russell Wilson game winning drive that makes Elway proud. Thank you so much for your time. I'll let you run on this. Where can our viewers go to connect with you? You're friggin' brilliant, man. Like, uh, I'm not even into the Browns, and I could listen to you talk stats all day. So, where can our viewers go to
I
connect
appreciate
with
it.
all your stuff?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Lucas TV, MikeLucas TV. And if you happen to like the Browns, give us a check out and a watch on YouTube at the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. It's 2 hours every day of the week. Some former players, some big time radio personalities in Cleveland. And it's Pat McAfee mixes with Barstool, mixes with a real little bit of TV action. Like I said, 2 hours a day. And we'd like to have some fun. So check it out. It's the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And you can follow me at Mike Lucas TV on Twitter.
Sweet man. Thank you so much.